I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Got a good one planned for you. My guest today, returning once again, is Ben from In the World News. Ben, how's it going, man?
Hey, I'm doing good. I'm just grateful for every day I wake up with breath. That means God has a purpose, and He has aligned our paths today to talk about a whole bunch of crazy stuff that's going on in this world. So I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Tell everyone, and yes, I'm very excited about what we're about to get into today, but tell everyone about you and your show.
So I have a show called End of the World News. I have an Instagram handle at End of the World News. I have a weekly show called End of the World News, the podcast. You can find it on YouTube, BitChute, across all audio platforms. And on that show, what I like to do is talk about stuff in geopolitical realm, domestic politics, all through a biblical worldview. I think we're leading up to the last 7 years of tribulation. So we go through that point of view and we kind of dissect what's happening, what we're seeing, and we look below the surface layer of things. And it ultimately goes back to bloodlines. It actually goes back to Deuteronomy 32, principalities, powers, and regions. And yeah, that's what we talk about. So if you like geopolitics and we laugh and we joke about it, give it a look, listen to.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have the links down there. Again, man, really excited to have you back on. The first time you came on, I thought was stellar. It amazes me that like this conversation that you and I had before we recorded, I was totally like on board with everything you're saying. It's amazing to me that we see things so similarly, and and that's not a necessity for this show. It's not like a prerequisite. It's not like if we have to disagree on something, that's cool too. But like everything you were saying in the pre-roll was like, man, this is exactly what I wanted to talk about today. This is great. This is really working out because there are major changes coming, I feel, to government. And it's not being talked about. This thing that's on us, we'll get into the terminology later, but this stuff that's on us right now, the major changes, they're not being talked about. And you look at people who are sort of spearheading this stuff, like Peter Thiel and JD Vance. When you look into their influences, it seems as if these guys have lost faith in democracy and they want to bring in something new. So I think we need to be talking about this because what they're bringing in might not be something we want. So I think it's imperative that we have this conversation. You know, they're going to want to change everything. We're on the cusp with technology being as it is. With technology, we saw this rise of tech in our lifetime. It's a wild time to be alive. With that is going to come major changes to government and money, I believe. And
yeah, I agree with you.
What do you got? I'm going to let you jump in.
Oh, no, I agree with you 100%. I think people right now, while all these major changes are going on, and it's nothing new, these are plans that are generational. But everybody's being led down the path of, who killed Charlie Kirk, right? Down the rabbit hole, and nothing's going to be solved from that because they don't want you paying attention to what their real plans are. They want you looking over here while they execute their plans over here. And then one day we're going to wake up and go, shit, sorry about my language, but here we are. So I think it's all part of the plan. And this stuff dates back generations. There's nothing new. And it actually helps you make sense of what you're seeing currently. Ever since, the first of the year, it seems like things have been turbocharged, almost like they threw a bunch of gasoline on a fire and it's just exploded. And I think 2026 is going to be the year of the technocrat.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to circle back to that, to the technocrat part there, because I got something I want to touch on here, because I think we're going to touch on the governance aspect of this soon and define these terms, but with money too, because I brought that up in the intro, the monetary side of this. It's like whoever the elites allow to change the current form of money, I think is going to be a magician. there's an occult aspect to this, and it's no small thing that whoever takes us off the old monetary system, they're going to want to have occult influence over that leader. That's a bold statement, but if you look at the history here, if you look at the Federal Reserve, that was, a secret meeting held by guys like Rockefeller. Arguably, that was done on an old altar and temple site of the Temecula. We could have a conversation later about whether they were descendants of the Canaanites, because their practices certainly were. But you look at the beginning of money, even before the Federal Reserve, they were the Lydians, right? They were these Turkish Mediterranean people. They were also in Eastern Greece. They were a very secret group. They brought about coinage, and you see the coins being used, like spreading out from the Mediterranean, right? And I'll try to make this concise here, but these coins had owls on them and all this other occult symbolism, goddess symbolism. Athena, Minerva, Lilith, all associated with the owl. And there's all these old Sumerian connections with Lilith and the owl. So my point is that money in its tangible form, going back to the beginning, has always been about magic, sorcery, and it's been under occult control since 500 BC. Whoever they bring in to change that and to change the way we govern things, like if they're going to get rid of democracy, there's an occult element to this. So I wanted to touch on that because this is all under the banner of technocracy. And I think you said the Technate earlier.
Yeah, the Technate. And I'm with you. I mean, who's behind the push of this new digital currency? Well, it's Silicon Valley, which is connected to the CIA, which is connected to these bloodlines. And when you start diving into what I think, major technological revolutions, I think this is all inspired by these fallen gods, by their demonic offspring. I think everything initiates in the unseen realm and then manifests into our reality. So you're right. I mean, whoever they pick, whatever the coin that's going to win, definitely that guy's going to be a cult to the bone.
Yeah. Yeah. 1 Timothy, it says the love of money is the root of all evil. And I think it's so interesting that you look at the first money, the first coins, and they have Lilith symbolism, which is the owl, and Lilith is the root of the Ishtar goddess tree. Lilith represents the owl, right? And the owl's on all these early coins. And one of the first coins I was looking at the other day, it has the owl on one side and Athena on the other side. And I think it symbolizes this connection between the main goddess and her connection to the demoness Lilith. It's like a goddess network, but it's represented in the money, and I'll move off of this because I don't want to get in too deep with it.
Just to, add on to that, I don't know if you can make this connection, but when I was researching about technocracy and the founder of it, Howard Scott, it says that he was living a bohemian lifestyle in Greenwich, New York. And when you think Bohemian, what do you think of? Bohemian Grove. Mm-hmm. What do they do there? They do a mock sacrifice to an owl. I don't know if you can make that leap, but it is interesting. I'm with you there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the people who listen to the show know that we've exposed this goddess worship element that's at play. I think it's still very much at play because these are occultists. Part of their belief system is goddess veneration, and it's left over from the ancient world, and it's still in effect. Now it's time to have these conversations like the one we're having today, where we expound on more of this element, and I think that's going to be technocracy. It's like, what did Grimes say in this interview I watched? She said that she believed humans were going to go from Homo sapient to Homo tech. Right.
And that's Elon Musk's baby mama, right?
Right.
The populist Elon Musk, America First Elon Musk was married to a transhumanist. It's not
No, and that whole relationship, if you look into the celebrity gossip of it all, that was born out of a tweet about Roku's basilisk, which Grimes had a nod to Roku's basilisk in one of her videos, right? Elon saw the video, knew about Roku's basilisk, and they started up a dialogue on Twitter over that. What that is the idea that this astral intelligence is going to come to Earth and try to control us through our technology, and then punish everybody who doesn't help it become or manifest itself through the technology, right? That's what Roku's Basilisk is all about. It emerged in 2010 on a nerdy web forum about AI. These were the only people talking about this in 2010, and they're talking about how there's a demonic element to it.
They're already
Elon
doing it,
knows
right?
about it. Yeah, that they're already doing it, but it just goes to show you, like, these people are forming their relationships in real life based on this stuff. They have philosophized this.
Oh yeah, they definitely worship these fallen gods, this goddess worship. It's all there. And they pretend to be whatever they need to pretend to be so the people believe them. But I would say do not trust any of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're in a position of power, if you're huge within, Silicon Valley, tied to the government, government officials, CEOs, I wouldn't trust any of them. I think behind the scenes, they're all part of these secret societies. Pick and choose which one you want to talk about. They're all part of it. And sometimes they overlap into other ones. But those are the people who are really running this. And at the end of the day, they don't worship the same God that you and I worship. They worship multiple gods that are actually serving, Satan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you dig deep enough into all these people, with Erica Kirk. I think there was a lot of talk of the Knights of Malta being involved there. That's a secret society that Alan Dulles was also a part of, the big CIA guy. And you look into Elon, and he talks about how he reads New Atlantis every week. There's a lot of that goes back to the order, I think, the main occult order that all the others branched off of. You look into Peter Thiel as well. You find out that he grew up on a, what do they call it, like some sort of a Nazi town,
Yes,
breakaway town in
in
South
South
Africa.
Africa.
Yeah.
Same with Elon. I mean, maybe not a breakaway town, but he was there during the same apartheid time as, Peter Thiel was.
Yeah, and I want to tell people, like, I'm not throwing that term Nazi around lightly here. This is a town. I'm trying to remember what they call it. It's like a community. And there's some specific term for it, but it's like an isolated community down there that was Nazi friendly, aka after the Third Reich fell, a lot of these guys came down there, and they were still flying the flags out there until recently, doing the salutes and everything. Like, it's a that we know that exists in South Africa, South America as well. Like, there's whole towns down there that look like little versions of Germany, where these ex-Nazis ended up settling. That's what this was in South Africa, and that's where he grew up. So, you look into all these people, just as, sort of finalize a point you made there, and there's always some sort of a weird occult strand with the Nazis that goes back to the Thule Society. That's a whole other episode, but the Nazis grew out of an occult order. Unfortunately, 80 years of World War II documentaries failed to touch on that, but that's what it is, right? Just to,
Oh, without a doubt. And, I think Europa is a bunch of BS to a certain extent. I think that the truth dies in war on both sides.
Mm.
And what you find out is like these Nazis, it's a real thing, and they're still in existence today. And they work hand in hand with the Zionists. Just go back to 1933 with the Havara Agreement. You think these factions are opposed to each other, and they're not. And I think they're using Zionism to destroy the current system that we have so that the Bilderberg group, and by the way, the guy who started the Bilderberg group was a card carrying member of the Nazi power, so they can then rebuild this transhumanist hellhole, one world technocratic government, aka the B system.
That was what was it? Prince
Felipe
Bernard?
or something?
Okay, he's a
Or
prince of
Philip?
what? The Prince of Finland or Norway or something like that.
I think it was Holland, I want to say,
Okay.
but it was like
Okay.
Prince Felipe, but he was a card carrying member of the Nazi party.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I looked into that one time, and he certainly was the guy who started the Bilderberg group. Of course, that was quickly sort of co-opted by the Rockefellers, but it definitely goes back to a Nazi. So the conspiracy here is that JD Vance secretly, quietly, no longer wants democracy to prevail. And because he's been influenced by these writers who think democracy is a failed system. and that a dictatorship would be better. If you look into Curtis Yarvin and some of these
I
other
was about to say that.
philosophers, uh, it seems as if they would prefer a tech corporate government to be in control, which, aka, that's a technocracy.
Yeah.
And mind you, that JD has quoted these thinkers like Curtis Yarvin before. So, maybe some people will find this dismissible, but I don't think it's very dismissible once you enter in the Peter Thiel factor here, because he
Oh,
openly talks like this.
well, Peter Thiel invested into Curtis Yarvin's BS like AI company, which ultimately just funded all the rest of the work that he was doing. And what I think they also pull from Curtis Yarvin is this idea of accelerationism, right? So they want this idea of technocracy to manifest, and they're using high impact events, accelerationists, to make this actually happen. And yeah, they all talk about Curtis Yarvin, 100%.
Mm-hmm. And the strongest link here is that Peter Thiel funded JD's rise to power, the whole thing.
The whole thing.
This guy, this tech overlord, Peter Thiel, got so much money and influence that he was able to buy a politician and put them in office. I've looked into this now, and I'm pretty certain that that's exactly what happened here.
Oh, he gave him his first job out of college with Mithril Capital. He then gave him the seed funding to start his own venture capitalist fund, and then gave him $14 million, the largest donation in, Senate history, to run for senator of Ohio. Then they put out this book called Hillbillyology, which is just, retelling the fake story of who he is to make him more, likable to the common person. And then you stick him in there. And it's not just him. If you look at everyone that surrounds Trump, like the undersecretaries of all these positions, they're all in the Palantir PayPal Mafia universe. Like this silent group of technocrats, which are ultimately being controlled by the higher ups at like the Bilderberg group and stuff like that. They're really ushering in through Trump. And it starts to make sense. Well, Trump's actions, especially the last 2 weeks, start to make sense when you understand what the original technocrats really wanted from 1933.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Comment on a few things there. When I saw that he worked at that Mithril place, it did come to mind, Mithra. I did think, oh, that sounds like a lot like Mithra. Hillbilly Elegy, that JD's book there, I'm sure there's some truth in there, but I do tend to view those types of things as a script these days, as the forming of a script. It's we saw that with George W. Bush. I mean, they scripted this guy's life out before he went to Yale, before JD went to Yale. JD went to Yale as well. They were working on his script, if you will, his rise to power before he went to Yale, just like they did George W. Bush. And with Bush, it's like they had these little talking points that would pop up that were pre-written, with him being like, they tried to paint him like a war hero. And they were like saying, he flew warplanes. And this is just a made up term. Like, just to make him sound like he served and all this and that. So they do this, man. They definitely do this. I just don't think people realize that Silicon Valley is sort of planning out this post-democratic new world right now. And like, I think maybe to define a few terms here, who is Thiel? Who are the technocrats? Who are the neo-robber barons? I'm just going to touch on that for people because, again, I don't hear this being talked about. So I want to make sure people have some sort of tools to understand what we're saying here today. I think in part, Orwell in 1984 was warning about the realities of what this technocracy would look like. And some of the early technocrats said it was more left than communism, right? So that's, get this in your mind, if you're listening, like what technocracy is all about. Communism has always benefited from surveillance, to tie in this Orwell part. So the two go hand in hand, right? It's just a newer version of communism in my view. I mean, I think that's why years ago, China, they quietly went from communist to calling themselves technocratic. So, and Thiel is the guy who has the 1984 surveillance state technology. His company is Palantir. This is like the harbinger of surveillance. And Thiel has said that technology can be an alternative for politics. So it's there. When you listen to what these guys are saying, this is definitely there. You know, they're the
Well,
PayPal mafia.
they were saying that in 1931. Like, people don't realize technocracy was actually birthed out of the Great Depression. And they view the world in terms of abundance. And they're like, why is everybody so poor if we're one of the wealthiest, regions in the area? And their argument was the current economic system and political system was still operating under scarcity. And with corruption and not knowing what they were doing, they weren't experts, that it was leading us into the Great Depression. So what they wanted to do was create a regional trading bloc called the North American Technate, replace all politicians and CEOs with engineers at the time because they understood efficiency. And they viewed output in terms of energy, net positive, net negative, but it was all energy. And they even wanted to replace the current dollar with what they called an energy voucher, right? So depending on how much the region produced, you would then create these energy vouchers, distribute them equally to all the people that live there. And to me, that's universal basic income. Like I said, there's nothing new under the sun. And I don't think they were able to pull it off back then, but ultimately it was led to another generation. And today, what do we see? We see engineers, software engineers, implementing the same system with their UBI, replacing, the federal government, their workers. I think maybe Elon Musk did a little bit of that with Doge. I think what he really did was Doge was introduce AI into the federal government as they're slashing workers and stuff like that. So yeah, I think this technocratic takeover is just a continuation of what they were doing in the 1930s.
Oh, for sure. It goes back to the Industrial Revolution. The neo robber barons, I think that's a big, Thiel, Musk, Bezos, Zuck. I'm calling all those guys the neo robber barons because the old robber barons helped set the stage for this. That was Rockefeller, Morgan, Carnegie, Ford, the guys who used to run this company, who weren't necessarily politicians either. That's another element to this rise of the CEO, this rise of the company man trying to run the country like a company, which I think is a mistake, right? It goes back to industrial revolution we trust. And now these guys are stepping up to try and run things in a very similar fashion in this very fourth industrial revolution way, which we know Klaus Schwab talked about that, the fourth industrial revolution. It's like the rise of the big tech CEO on the world stage here. My concern here is that they already have all the money they want for nothing. So what's left? Power.
I also think, though, maybe we can get on this later. I think it's also this manufacturing or trying to fulfill prophecy. Because the original map from 1941, which created the North American Technate, which includes Greenland, and it goes all the way down to Venezuela and Colombia. However, after that, the Club of Rome came out in 1971 with their 10 regional trading blocks as well, kind of piggybacking up that idea. Now, they cut off Mexico, but they set the world into these 10 regional trading blocks. And immediately what I think of is the 10 kings that arise before they give their power to the beast, especially in the time we're living in with this, technological revolution and this transhumanist society ushering in.
Yeah. Do you have that Technate map?
Yeah. I mean, if you just type in Technocracy Technate map from 1941, that should pop up. And that will give some explanation on why Trump. You got that right there? There we go. So. Yeah, pull that bad boy up.
How about this one right here in the red? Okay, hopefully this takes me. Oh, perfect. So here we go. And you can see. Yeah, go ahead. Take it.
So if you want to know why Trump kidnapped Nicolas Maduro, threatened to, go into Colombia next, also then threaten Greenland, it's because he's securing the northern and southernmost borders of this Technate map. I mean, it's right there. Could it be for oil? Possibly. That's one of the reasons. Could it be because they have a central bank that's not part of or a state-ran bank that's not part of the central banking system? Possibly. But to me, that's all part of the those are all pieces in this great puzzle, which is this North American Technate that they're starting to set up. And interesting enough, guess whose grandfather ran the Canadian division of Technocracy Inc.? Elon Musk. So is it a surprise that when we went into Venezuela and, kidnapped Nicolas Maduro, whether that's real or not, I don't know. Is it a surprise that he was rooting this on? Absolutely not.
Yeah. This to me is the true New Atlantis. If somebody was to take Francis Bacon's book and say, one day, this is where we want to go with this thing, and this is the territory we want. If they were to literally sit down and map out the vision of New Atlantis, that's what this would look like. I think too, now that I've been looking into this, if Manly P. Hall were still alive, I imagine he would say this is at least an attempted takeover of the New Atlantis plan. If it's not the plan itself, it's at least, it's too close to be ignored to that. The Technates use terms like utopian society and new machine. I've seen that's, Elon Musk's grandpa's group were using those sort of terms like new machine, utopian society, and et cetera. And it's like, I just want to point out that that's Francis Bacon adjacent vernacular for sure. So you can kind of see Musk has said, I think I may have said this earlier in the show, actually, that he reads this New Atlantis book on a weekly basis. They're Theo, Zuck, Bezos, Musk are like the totalitarian government in 1984, I think, ran by these tech CEOs, reading Francis Bacon, reading New Atlantis, thinking that this is going to be an occult utopia. And as you can see this kind of runs in the family because Musk's grandpa was the one mapping this out. And by the way, he was flying around looking for a legendary city as well. He was looking for like a lost city. He actually died in a plane crash, and it's been suggested that he was out there looking for this lost city. So, I don't know how deep into the lore you want to go, but when you start looking for lost cities and making maps, Atlantis. You're looking for the old Atlantis, trying to build the new one. That's what this is all about, man. I don't know. What do you think about that?
No, he's truly a believer in the old world, in the world of these fallen gods and when they came down. And I know he's not on the side of the Most High God. So yeah, I mean, I read that too. Isn't that interesting that he leaves Canada, and this guy's tied to the Nazis too, and then spent the rest of his time searching for this mythological city that he couldn't find ever. And he actually died in a plane crash. I wonder if it was he was trying to find this city. But yeah, I mean, these people are all, they know about the occult, they know about our occult history, and they don't hide it, but people don't know what to look for when they talk about this stuff. So it kind of flies by people's head.
Yeah. Greenland, of course, being on this map is no mistake. I've been talking about this for a year now. I've been telling people, I think a year ago, I was on Niflheim Death Squad and I was telling people they want to take Greenland. It's a part of this plan. It goes back to the Francis Bacon stuff. And of course, now in the news, my Instagram feed is just a bunch of people talking about this whole Greenland thing. I don't know about you, but I thought about putting together like a collage of all these Instagram posts of different influencers talking about this because it just blew up in the last week or so. But we've been talking about it on the show for a year at least. This is, they want Greenland to be the tech utopia. And I don't know if you looked into this, man, but did you get into Praxis any?
Yep. The crypto city that they want to create up in Greenland, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So did you have anything else you want to talk about with this map?
That I think that this map is part of the larger play as far as creating 10 regions. And I think that bloodlines will fight over what region will include, certain territory and stuff like that. But ultimately, I think this is part of the greater plan to divide the entire world up into 10 trading regions before they give their power to the beast, which will then usher in this one world government, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah. Let's come back to some of those points, man, and build up to that some more. Let's talk about, that's interesting. Praxis. I don't want to leave this behind. You have So first of all, you have Peter Thiel, and I'll tell you what, I'll pull this map up later if we need it.
Cool.
Um, First of all, you have Peter Thiel naming his companies after these very occult ideas. Palantir, of course, the Seer Stone, the Sorcerer's Stone in Lord of the Rings. And then you got this Praxis company, which is funded by Thiel, and I think it sounds like Abraxas. And he worked. These guys have these associations with Mithril. I think all this stuff is just super close to these occult ideas. The project of Praxis is to build techno-utopic cities. The guy running that is Dryden Brown. He tweeted not so long ago that he went to Greenland to try and buy it. Just kind of threw it out there for anybody who's paying attention. These guys are. I mean, this is like straight out of Francis Bacon's New Atlantis again, like what they want to do. And you go to the Praxis website, you have what I would call. Here we go with the Nazi occultism, right? You have what I would call a modernized black sun symbol. Is the Praxis symbol?
Really?
They've inverted the colors and they've modified it, right? But these guys are said to be into that sort of thing, right? So they're on the underneath the symbol on the website. It said, I've got a quote here about this. Praxis is the world's first digital nation. It's a home for the brave who strive for virtue and wisdom. Our purpose is to restore Western civilization and pursue our ultimate destiny of life among the stars. See, they're hitting on everything. They're hitting on
Among the
us
stars.
yeah. Yes, that, we could get into some Elohim talk with that, right? We want to bind our destinies together as citizens of the first network empire. This is all New World Order jargon. It's all about building city states. I think what they did was a long time ago, the Vatican figured this out. Building a city state, that's the way to go. I see CERN did it too. They've got some sort of a weird legal thing going on where that's like the city of London is within the banking sector is its own sort of a city state somehow. DC, of course, the guys from the order who helped create this country knew about this. So they're following an older thing here. And among the new people involved with this, you've got Sam Altman, you've got Thiel, you've got remember Sam Bankman-Fried?
Yeah.
Remember that guy? You got the Winklevoss twins, all these, Silicon Valley guys. And the talk online is that, and there's like pictures of texts and stuff about this. The employees from Praxis are saying that the higher ups in this company are obsessed with Nazi occultism. Well, and that might not be, coincidence, seeing that we know what we now know about Thiel's background living in this sort of Nazi commune.
Well, look at Technocracy. I mean, that had direct ties to the Nazis during 1930 in the 1930s. They used to wear gray suits. In fact, that's part of the reason why it fell out of favor, after the war, and he moved over to, Africa. But there were direct ties to socialism right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Nazis. Yeah. And
yeah,
so
the Nazis. Go ahead.
Yeah. So you see that, come into the light again with the new group of people who are trying to usher this in. And like you said, it's occultists, right? That's what Nazism is. It's occultist. It's not like these racist people. Yeah, they were racist and stuff like that. But like the core group that actually manifested the whole Nazi movement, they were occultists. When they were trying to create the Aryan race, that wasn't just a white, person. This, in my opinion, this was the Nephilim, right? They were trying to bring back with all this eugenic stuff, which we're kind of doing today. But yeah, it's definitely a cult. It's passed on generation to generation. So it's not surprising that these people are saying the same things. And I think they're probably doing rituals. I think they're probably in communion with these fallen gods. Nothing new is under the sun. They're doing it now just like they did it back then.
Yeah, so I think you're absolutely right. Like the deeper I went into studying the occult roots of the Nazis, that's what I was starting to find were these direct links back to the Nephilim. And in fact, talking about the black sun symbol, Himmler was putting the black sun symbol up on his castle in Wewelsburg, where he had established a new order of the SS. And he fashioned it after the Knights Templar and some of these other occult groups. And he's in one of the factions of the SS, like his elite faction, he said in quotes that he was looking for men of a certain size with a certain bloodline. He said they have to be tall and they have to be a certain bloodline to be in this group. That's a Nephilim for sure. I mean, I don't have to tell you that for sure, but the giants and all that. But that's how deep this goes. And like you said, yeah, the real Nazi occultists who started the movement came from the Thule Society. That was Walter Neuhaus and Rudolf von Sabbatendorf. Collectively, they were in at least 10 other occult orders. And that's how this all became a thing. That's how the National Party, the what was it? It turned into the National Socialist Party over there, which turned into the Nazi Party. And let me point out that Thule Society had big plans for Greenland. They were obsessed with Greenland.
Really?
Yes. That was a big thing over there. I mean, they believed that the land of Ultima Thule was the land of their ancestors. And to this day, if you look at northern Greenland, there's places up there called Thule. The Nazis had a base there called Thule Air Base that we took over at the end of the war in like 46 or 47. That's still our thing. It's a Space Force base today.
I actually heard something interesting that, part of the reason, I think there's multiple reasons why they want these areas, but I heard that, to your point about occultism, and we know that the Nazis went all over the world searching for this stuff. I heard that there's some spiritually charged areas up in Greenland, whether that's with fallen gods and stuff like that. And that's possibly one of the reasons why they wanted to bring it back into the fold, at least within their control, because of ley lines and, all throughout the world. But there's something spiritual, not in a good way, that's going on up in Greenland that they wanted, kind of like you hear about before, what's it called? The Iraq War. What did they find? The Tomb of Gilgamesh, literally like 3 or 4 weeks before that war break out. And then all of a sudden they take that back. So this could possibly be that as well. There might be some spiritual component up there as well.
I think so. And I'll show you a picture here in a second. That might tie into this with the ley line thing. I don't want to just keep saying New Atlantis here, but I think that a lot of this goes back to this whole Francis Bacon thing. Of course, the guys in this country like Washington, Jefferson, Franklin all read that book. See, talking about scripting things out. That was like a script for them. It was like a roadmap for them to start the country in the first place. And now you see it arising or re-arising or re-emerging as a roadmap for this neo-robber baron tech bro class of CEO governance. And Thiel Musk talks about New Atlantis. Of course, I've said that already. Thiel talks about New Atlantis too in his New York Times interview. And reportedly in his Antichrist lectures, he was talking about New Atlantis as well. But Greenland is definitely a part of this. The Nazis were looking at it. They had another society called the Anerbe Society, Anerbe. And they were going around looking for all these power zones on the earth, these ley line areas. You could do a whole show on that. And they were up there poking around Greenland. That's why I think they put the base there in the first place. And I don't think it's any coincidence that we took over that base and now made it a Space Force base. And there's more up there to be discussed. I want to show you this picture here. So this is, do you remember this?
When JD Vance went and gave a speech to the people of Greenland and said, we're basically going to take you over.
Yeah. So this was early in the administration, right?
Or should I say the angel of death?
Yeah, because he killed the Pope. You remember that?
He killed the Pope.
What was it like? So he goes to Greenland and he goes to talk to the Pope, and the Pope dies the next day.
Yeah.
Like the next day.
Hey,
crazy.
I'm not hating on that, but
I know I probably shouldn't be laughing so hard at that. It's just too like it's too out there. Everything about this conversation is stranger than fiction,
Mhm.
literally. And when this happened, okay, so here's another picture down here of them. His I guess that's his wife. She poses.
I think one real quick that I think that's a completely sham marriage. Have you ever read Hillbillyology? What's interesting, I never read it, but I heard someone talking about it. In that book, he says by the time he was in college, he had convinced himself that he was gay. And then he met Peter Thiel. So you put two and two together. Part of this,
What?
yeah, that's in the book. So yeah, I don't think his marriage is a real marriage at all. I think that's a beard running cover for, who knows what they're doing behind closed doors.
Dude, what's with that? Didn't Obama say similar things?
Oh, Obama, he actually, when he was in college, he wrote letters to his girlfriend about how he fantasized about gay relationships with men.
Yeah, yeah. What is it with these guys, man? Like, um, I'm a live and let live guy, but it is weird.
Oh,
It
me
is
too.
weird.
I just pointed out because you
Right.
got to talk about the truth. Like I said, what you do behind closed doors is between you and God. Either
Hmm.
God's okay with it or he's not. And I don't love you any less based on your choices. However, I do think it's weird that a lot of these people in a position of power are either open homosexuals or closeted homosexuals, especially when you're talking about DC, especially when you're talking about the propaganda wing or the fourth estate, right? With the news media. It's really weird. Or even in music. Look what happened with Diddy. I always thought it was weird that you have this genre of music that promotes, machismo, chicks and gangs and violence, and behind closed doors, they're all a bunch of closeted homosexuals. So you're really going on, like, what's really going on here?
100%, man. It's I want to. I gotta show you this though. You're about to pull me down another rabbit hole, but I want to show you this first.
Mm.
um, when this came out, this caught my eye. Right, this picture. I'm gonna tell you why. Uh, in the articles, they were. I would say they were misleading about where he actually was. There's another base up there, and I don't know if I can pronounce it or not, like Pific or something like that. They said he was at that base. That base is not on this location because I know about this location. I found out I was studying this location in it for a past investigation, let's just say. So when I saw this picture, I knew exactly where he was at. And I don't
Well,
know if
fill me
anybody's
in.
yeah, I don't know if anybody's picked up on this yet or not, but let me show you another picture and you can compare and you tell me if you think that this is the right place. Do you think that's the same place?
Oh, yeah.
I think it
100
is.
feet.
This is called Camp
NASA
Century.
Gulfstream 3 back in April.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, that's
yeah,
exactly where he is. Watch,
yeah.
go
This
back to
is
that.
okay. Camp
And what,
Century.
what, what do they claim is going on over there? That's it.
Yeah, that's it, right? Camp Century is an interesting one. This is um it's a cold it's apparently it's a Cold War era military installation. I looked into this and I looked into it more last night and I noticed that they have changed the Wikipedia about this place in
Really?
recent days. Yes. Um because a year ago when I looked into this, they were before Vance goes, they were talking about Camp Century, how it was called the city under the ice. There were I'm trying to remember, but again, like this used to be on the Wikipedia, but they've since changed it. They were saying that there was around 12,000, I think, to 16,000 miles of tunnels under this place. And
When did they say it was built?
in let me look it up. In the 50s, I believe, because we went in, and again, a lot of this was changed from Wikipedia, but when I looked into this originally, they said I think it was built in the 50s, and it was our government came in. We told Denmark, because Denmark owns Greenland, right? Well, everybody knows that now, I think. We told Denmark, hey, we're doing some science stuff. up there? Can we send our scientists up there and make a base and and this and that? They didn't tell Denmark what they were really doing. What they were really doing was installing this underground military base with apparently 12 to 16,000 miles of tunnels connected to it. Now, Wikipedia has changed that number to 3 kilometers of tunnels. That's not what it said until recently. So something weird is going on with this place. They call it the city in the ice as well.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
Do you think when they talked about, 12 or 16,000 miles worth of tunnels, that they found those tunnels and they were pre-built?
See, that's possible. That's possible. Hey, I'll tell you what I'm going to do here, man. I'm going to pull up Camp Century on Google because I want to see if this other picture shows up, because it might tie into yes. It might tie into what you're saying here. Do you see this picture of the giant coming out of the ground? Oh, let me go back.
You got to pull it up for me.
Do you see this picture of the giant?
I don't think you're sharing it on the screen right now.
Oh, sorry. Thanks. Get this going here. So when I type in, do you see that now?
Yeah.
So when I type in Camp Century, this is one of the images that comes up. There's some sort of a giant coming out of the ground.
So that's right there next to the military installation.
I guess because it comes up. It's in the area somewhere. So yeah, what's really going on with this place? I don't know the background on this giant. Let me just put that out there. But when I type in Camp Century, it comes up. What was JD Vance doing at this place, right? That's the main question.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll tell you one thing. I think everything we're seeing in the news right now about this is political theater to a certain extent. I think, this opposition by the European leaders, sending over like 40 people in a recon mission to stop Trump from doing this. I think this is all political theater.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a done deal already. Because like I said, I think these bloodlines ultimately work together.
Mm-hmm.
The Danish bloodline surely believed in New Atlantis, just like the blue blood American European bloodlines that came over to America. So I think a lot of this is political theater, because I don't think they can just give Trump or the technocrats, Greenland without, staging somewhat of a fight.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I'll just throw this one last thing in about Camp Century and we can move on. But it says here, and again, they've updated this, but it's saying it's an abandoned Arctic United States military scientific research base in Greenland. It's according to documents declassified in 1996, it was a preliminary camp for Project Iceworm, whose goal was to install a vast network of nuclear missile launch sites that could facilitate a first strike. They say that the missiles were never fielded at the facility. All this could be total hogwash. The Danish government was never broached. The camp operated from 1959 until 1967. See, and this is where it says it now. It says it consisted of 21 tunnels with a total length of 9,800 feet. But I'm telling you, that's been adjusted. And then I didn't look into this Project Iceworm, but top secret United States Army operation program in the Cold War to build a network of mobile nuclear missile launch sites under the Greenland ice sheet. So this is under the ice sheet, dude. That's, who knows? There might be caverns down there.
Oh, I think, just like, Antarctica, I think the same thing's going on up in the northern point of the globe, if that's what we live on. With all this ice covering stuff up. Did you ever see that show True Detective?
Yeah, I really liked that one with
Did you watch the most recent one?
No, I did not.
Well, that took place up in Alaska, which is kind of in that region. And it had that swirly symbol, and it was like this supernatural thing that was out there that everybody was scared of. There's a lot of ancient stuff that went up in that area, and I wonder if the ice is covering all of it. And when, you know, the Nazis went up there or down there to explore this stuff, I think that's what they were in search for, was what's beneath the ice.
100%. They say that in some of the old Nazi documents too, that they were looking for the ancient civilizations that were beneath the ice. Then it gets all convoluted with all this inner Earth lore, but that doesn't change the fact that there's probably caverns down there beneath the ice already. I think that's why. I think that's how you get a 12,000, 16,000 miles of tunnels. Some of it's probably natural. And
Oh yeah,
that's a giant number, by the way. That's a long
I know. Like,
distance.
where do they go? Across the world?
Right, exactly. And
Possibly. Yeah.
look at this. Yeah, possibly. So that's we have a military base down there beneath this thing. Who knows how extensive it is? This is tied in with this technocratic worldview, with the plans they have. This is what I'm trying to Paul Revere this. Been trying to tell people for a year now that this is happening. And I mean, what more do you need? Like, the vice president goes there as soon as he gets in office. Like, I'm telling people this for a reason. And look at this map, dude. It shows you where Thule is in relation to Camp Century. It's right
There you
next to
go.
it. It looks like it's on the ley line, if I'm going to get real weird, right?
Yeah.
They're right next to each other. And let me see if it'll come back up again. Well, but anyway, it said Thule. Did you see that?
Yeah, right there. Then you also have what, New Schwabland and stuff like that down in Antarctica.
Yeah, yeah. And this is the base that the Nazis originally um, planted their flag in. And that's again, it's no coincidence. They found something there and they said, we're going to establish a headquarters here.
Yeah. I'll tell you one thing. I hate throwing out dates and stuff like that, but you know, I'm a conspiracy theorist. And in order for them to manifest a reality, they use these high impact events. And I don't know if the American people have the stomach for us to really, you know, acquire Greenland, acquire Mexico, acquire, Colombia and things like that. I think that we're going to see a high impact event happen. Now, if you look at the cover of The Economist from December, and that's when they do their, yearly predictions that are about to come, and they have that mural or that painting on the front of the cover that, conspiracy theorists used to like to look at to say, oh, what are they planning? What are they planning? And what's interesting is there's this whole bunch of chaos going on, and it's almost like it's encircled by what looks to be a ball. And at the lower corner of the painting, there is a soccer player kicking this ball into motion. Well, what's happening this year in North America, in Canada, in the United States, and in Mexico? The World Cup. And I can definitely see them staging some type of high impact event that they can then use as a precursor to actually acquire Greenland, to actually acquire Mexico at some point, and they'll use national security reasons like they always do to do this. So pay attention to what goes on at the World Cup this year.
Mm. And if they have any kind of an opening ceremony for that, definitely pay attention to that. They like yeah, because there's so many eyes on it, they like to treat those like ceremonial rituals.
Yeah. And just think about this, this magazine, The Economist, this was about 10 years back. I think it was from like 2012. Same type of thing. They had this cover that said a roadmap to hell. And basically they had Satan there next to a climate change machine. And you had all these other world leaders like in this pit of lava or pit of fire. However, above it, you had Benjamin Netanyahu on a hang glider, a Hamas, fighter on a hang glider, and they're shooting at each other. Well, what do they tell us kicked off this initial thing back in October? Was it October 7th it happened? October 6th, 2 or 3 years ago with the Gaza thing? Gaza's coming, Hamas fighters coming over in hang gliders. So there's a lot of stuff in these covers of The Economist. And as we know, it's owned by the Rothschild. It's also owned by some prominent Italian Italian industrials family. They're known as the Italian Kennedys. So pay attention to what's going on in the Economist covers from this year. It's really interesting stuff.
Yeah, I think that those are seeded with all types of symbolism. I look at those covers now, and kudos to you, man, because you've brought a lot of this to my attention. I I wasn't paying attention to those magazine covers. I'd heard people talk about them, but you really got me to pay more attention to those. And now I see those as if I see them akin to the mural at the Denver airport.
Yeah.
Where there's all kinds of stuff seated in there. It's symbolic. It's almost prophetic of things to come. And that's the thing. Like when I was going on about how I talked about this, on NDS a year ago, I'm not trying to be like, oh, I'm some prophet here. It's just I've read through some of the occult literature, and that's how I know about this. I know about this because they've been talking about this for so long. Forget New Atlantis from Francis Bacon for a second. Nostradamus. Nostradamus said in the 21st century, the two world powers would unite over the North Pole and set something up there and run shop out of there. Edgar Cayce said in the 21st century, the Straits of Davis were going to be very important. That's that little strip of that. Well, it's a big strip of water between Greenland and Canada. He said they were using that to set aside land for a very important reason. So, and then and then you can go and read New Atlantis and see what Bacon has to say about how to set all this up. Bacon was talking about this. It's a scientific priestcraft that runs a country. And then in that book, they called themselves the Order of the Temple of Solomon. So what I'm saying here is like I'm just reading the occult material and telling everybody what they say about this.
Yeah, it's interesting. And that just, I think that shows that everything is initiated in the spiritual realm, right?
Yeah.
Like, where did Nostradamus get all this stuff? Where did Sir Francis Bacon get all this stuff? And I just think it takes time to ultimately manifest whatever reality that they want. The one thing I'm trying to figure out is why do they conspiracy theorists will look at this as like, oh, they're giving us clues. They're giving us clues. To me, the question is, why do they put this stuff out? Like, if the cover of The Economist is one of these, examples, why are they putting out their secret plans in public? And the only thing I can come up with, and you might know this more than I after diving into this cult stuff, is this all part of the magic trick? Is this all part of the manifestation of it? But you have to speaking it into existence first, and it takes generations to do that. Like, why do you think they put this stuff out way in advance before they actually do it?
Yeah, there's several things going on with that. And some of it's very mystical, I think. Some of it you can use that word manifestation for, certainly. And again, that's the whole thing with New Atlantis. It's like, was he trying to speak that into existence, or was he just simply trying to pass the baton along because they believed that its existence was inevitable in this prophetic, purely occult prophetic sense? Because what they were doing was they were reading Greeks. The same people who gave us their information about Atlantis is who they were reading up about this. And the Greeks believed that there was land set aside over here in the Western Hemisphere. They called it the Hesperides, and the blessed land, the land of the blessed. And it was to be set aside for this one day for this occult utopian empire. The Greeks believed in it. So Francis Bacon was picking up on that. And was he trying to speak that into existence, or was he just passing the baton of information along for George Washington to one day act upon?
Was he a Rosicrucian?
Bacon was, yes.
So it's really interesting, and I'll have to send this to you. My buddy sent this to me. There is a Rosicrucian group in the United States that used to meet yearly, and they used to have notes of all their meetings, and it was published. And there's actually a spiritual reason why they want to reunite America and Mexico. And they brought it all the way back to Atlantis and the days of Egypt and stuff like that. That one time that America and Mexico were actually connected. And there's a spiritual component why they want to reunify that. And once that's done, get ready, according to the Rosicrucians.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, and this is something I haven't even done yet with my show. It's something I want to cover extensively soon in the near future, is the Rosicrucians. I've talked to everybody about the Templars, and I think I've shown their role in all this. There's still more work to be done on that, but I think the Rosicrucians is a good next stop for this show to talk about that. There's a lot of these guys were not only Templars, but they were also Rosicrucians. And then you get into, speaking of knowing about this land being over here way before Columbus, right? The Greeks knew about this land. They knew about North America way before Columbus. Well, the Rosicrucians did as well. And if you go to Roslin Chapel in Scotland, there's all this evidence carved into the walls there that the Rosicrucians and the Templars were the ones who knew about it after the Greeks. It's like the Greeks and the orders, the ancient order that came out of ancient Greece, passed this info directly to the Rosicrucians and the Templars. And this ties in with the Phoenicians because they had the seamanship to do it. They were like seafaring merchants, so they were all in this order. And if you look at Roslin Chapel, there's 3 types of plants that are indigenous to North America and exclusively indigenous to North America. And they've since brought in botanists to check those plants, and they're like, yeah, one of them was corn, maize. Another one was a type of cactus that's only seen in the North American Southwest. Another was another one. I'd have to look it up. It's got a weird name. It was very specific. And the botanist was like, that is that third one that sold this to me. He's like, they had to have known about North America. And this was built in the 1300s, I believe. I think. Don't crucify me, guys, if I got that date wrong. I have to look it up again. But Roslin Chapel, I think 1300s. So how did they know about it, man? They did. This was part of the plan. It's always been part of the plan. And it's like you're saying, look out for what's going to happen here.
Yeah, I mean it's right there, and I don't think they want to tell us why they're really doing it. I think they want to distract us with kind of WWF tactics of Trump talking crap, and then Europe coming back and saying we're not going to let you do it. But ultimately, I think that all these bloodlines, right? They all work together for this great plan of creating these 10 regional trading blocks, or what I would call the 10 kings that ultimately give their power to the beast.
Yeah. By the way, Roslin Chapel was 1446 by Sinclair.
And when did they say we came over to America? When they say,
Right. Columbus was 1480, 92.
Okay.
So this was, almost 50 years before. And another thing I meant to do this earlier, but I meant to just give out the definition of technocracy, and I got carried away. But it's a government or control system of society by elites and technical experts. And
engineers.
Engineers. That's always been possible to have. This goes back to Guardians of the Republic, another Greek manuscript from Plato, where it talks about the few ruling the many. It's always been possible. And they've always done it in certain pockets of the world, but it's very possible now with technology. Technology is what is making this blossom for the first time and be attainable for the first time. And wouldn't you know, the richest people in America now are tech overlords. So this is a perfect storm for this to happen.
And I'll tell you one thing. I think part of the, how do you say that, the noticing movement or the conspiracy movement, I think has intelligence all over it. I think a lot of us started waking up when QAnon came around, and I think that's an intelligence operation. But people for the first time, I should say the first time, but like en masse are starting to see the corruption of our government, of our public officials. And I think this is all part of the plan to usher in technocracy, right? Because if you're so sick and tired, similar to like it was in the Great Depression, of everything that's happening because of mismanagement, these, corrupted politicians, stuff like that, what's the best solution for that? Well, AI, right? AI will run everything perfectly. I think they're setting that up for us to go, you know what? Anything's better than these politicians. And then they're going to come, well, guess what? AI is impartial. AI is not corruptible. It will just need to make the right decisions at the right time. We'll get rid of government bloat and all that kind of stuff. And I think ultimately all this noticing of this corruption is an attempt or a vehicle to usher in, AI ruling over everything.
Yeah. Yeah. It's technocracy. It's presided over by science. It's an electronic control system using AI. It's a occult new enlightenment that brings about singularity. And I want to start, talking about this more on here. We haven't even touched the singularity yet today, but this leads to, I think, singularity. But I want to point something else out. Like it's this technocratic way of thinking that has led to a lot of things that are less desirable in society, like eugenics. That was apparent in Aldous Huxley's work in Brave New World. That comes out in 1932, I believe. That's the same time that Elon Musk's grandpa is a part of the Technate movement. The first technocrats come out of the 30s, and Aldous Huxley was a part of it. And that work, and his brother Julian especially, they were proponents of eugenics. The Nazis were listening to or reading their work and getting ideas from American eugenics programs, just like the Nazis were studying our technocracy. It was more philosophical at the time, but the ideas of technocracy, the Nazis we were taking the lead on that one. They were just taking notes. Another thing, undesirable in my opinion, New World Order is a part of this, of course, right? I mean, that's apparent in H.G. Wells' works. H.G. Wells literally wrote a book called The New World Order. It's one of the books he wrote that nobody ever talks about. He was a major technocrat. He's one of the guys who went over there to Russia and I think told Stalin, like, I'm more communist than you are. I'm further left than you are, or something along those lines. He was like over there, gloating about it. And apartheid, you know, which was supported by Peter Thiel.
Yeah.
I mean, Thiel went to, was it Stanford? Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Stanford. There was a huge anti-apartheid movement happening at Stanford at the time he was there. The students were protesting it for good reason, I think. I'm not always behind these, like leftist college protests, but this one, I think they had a right to protest apartheid. Come on, like this is it's a protest for racism, right? Or against racism. And while he's there, he's one of the only voices pro apartheid, Peter
He
Thiel.
was pro apartheid when he was in college.
Yeah.
Makes
Yeah.
sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
And now he wants to enslave humanity. These were almost like test cases on how they can usher this in. And now they pick certain regions on the map. And I think now they're trying to turn the entire world into an apartheid state, right? Where you have the engineers and the technocrats, the elite who own all these corporations. And then they're going to have a universal basic income. They give us all this, they're going to put Oculus glasses on us, load us up with drugs and video games. And I think that's how they're going to rule over us, because I think the technological advancements they made are so much more advanced than they show us. I think what they show us is, probably 20, 30 years, behind. And there's no point of humans anymore. There isn't, in my opinion. I think they just have to usher us out slowly so we don't get, people don't start paying attention. Like, what's going on here? Why are you trying to get rid of us? I think this is generation after generation, so we don't notice this. But I think this was always the plan.
Yeah. Yeah. And now it's just ramping up. You mentioned accelerism before. That's
Mhm.
another philosophical movement adjacent to the tech bros are into that. I mean, I don't know. Did you come across Nick Land any?
Nick Land. So he was working for Google, right? Is that
I don't know about that. I'm not an expert on him, but he's one of these guys like Curtis Yarvin, who they're drawing heavily from.
okay?
He's an occultist. He
Yeah. So I
actually,
think, is that the guy who created some type of AI that's an occultist at Google, or
maybe,
some type of
maybe.
robot?
I just know that they've been reading his books and sort of gleaning from his philosophy, and he moved into one of Crowley's old houses. Uh, and he took a group of people. He got gained these followers, kind of like a cult leader, and they moved into Crowley's house, and they did a bunch of drugs. And I don't know if he got kicked out of the country or if he just left, but he ended up over in China. He goes quiet for a couple of years. He resurfaces in China. Of course, China, right? They are a technocracy. And what does he do? He starts singing the praises of China. Like, they've got it figured out over here. That's Nick Land, and there's a lot more to it. I have to do more on him, but he's one of these guys who are influencing the Peter Thiels of the world. And this is, it's always, like you said, it's always been a plan. And now they have the technology as a means to do it. And they're talking about the singularity. That's another thing here. All these guys have dropped this as a term. Like Elon Musk was talking about the
Recently, Elon
singularity.
Musk has dropped singularity. He said we're almost there.
Yeah. I got a quote. This gets into Ray Kurzweil.
That guy's a freak.
Yeah.
That guy.
Yeah. What do you know about him too?
Oh, I know all about Ray Kurzweil and futurism. I mean, he was kind of leading the charge by himself for a long time.
Yeah. 1999, he comes out with his book, and he says, to his credit, I guess, he has stuck by his guns and said the singularity will occur in 2029. He's been saying that since 1999, which tells me that he presented a 30-year plan there. I don't know if he thought it out or not, but he certainly presented a 30-year plan. And it gets interesting when you look into him. He said that the tech was obviously going to bring in a major change, and I looked into this to decipher this, and I looked into Kurzweil, and he was saying there's this whole Nazi thing. I'm trying to figure out how to set this up. Basically, he's been saying with confidence since 1999 that the singularity is coming. It's coming. Get ready for it. And in 99, the book he puts out is called The Age of the Spiritual Machine, right? Age of the Spiritual Machine. Very Rudolf Steiner, like when you get into Ahriman and Lucifer and all that. And Kurzweil, he's a mystic himself somewhat. He talks about getting all these ideas by assigning himself a question right before falling asleep. He said it's called lucid thinking. You're in that space, right? Some would say you're getting ready to enter into another realm at that point, the dream realm, and you can get these answers or whatever. So it's a very mystical thing. And if you look at his work, it's very much like the Matrix, which is a Gnostic occult theory, I think. And I'm bringing this up because the Matrix comes out in 1999, the same year as this book. And some would suggest the Matrix is a metaphor for Gnosticism, where Neo embodies this savior figure who rises up to lead the way to liberation. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's definitely the Gnostic point of view, which is why I don't put too much, stock in that movie. Although I think they do tell us some truths. But I find interesting, though, did I ever tell you, and maybe I did in our last podcast, but as far as the technological revolution is very occult and inspired by these fallen gods. Did I ever tell you about Seymour Cray?
Tell me again.
Well, I just love telling this story. So if you're listening to this podcast, you can listen to our last one. Seymour Cray was the godfather of supercomputing, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was an engineer. And his work took those giant IBM computers that used to, take up whole rooms, and it made the smaller personal computer. Well, anyway, he's quoted in saying multiple times that whenever there was a math problem that he could not solve, he had a tunnel underneath his house. He would start digging in that tunnel. Then the elves would come out, and just think of all your fairy lore and stuff like that. The elves would come out and give him the answer to the problem that he was looking for. So, to me, that sounds very occult. That means you're in communion with entities outside of this realm, and this guy knew it, and it was part of his common practice as far as this huge, all these breakthroughs he was making in the mathematical and engineering department of the computer.
Yeah, man. And there's story after story that's like that involving these tech magnates, especially the early tech magnates. Even the Charles Babbage, one of the first computers, I believe, was built by him, and he was talking about how he built it. He had metaphysical reasons for building it in the first place. He was going to try and get in touch with the devil so that he could prove there was a devil, so that he could prove that there was a devil and a God, according to him.
But time out. One of the guys originally wanted to create a computer so he could contact the devil.
Yeah, Charles Babbage. I think he's the creator of the first supercomputer. I'll have to look it up in a minute. He built one of the first computers. His name's all over the place. Like, you'll see it if you look him up. But I did this. I did a couple episodes with Ani and Ani Osaru. Shout out to him. And he dropped this term on me one day. He was, he was giving one of his epic speeches, and they dropped this term technognostics, and I was like, that's what
That's it.
these people are. They're technognostics, and they chase after the salvation and immortality through tech. They chase after this mysticism through tech. They see this as a bridge for them to get to the other side. And for Charles Babbage, contact the devil himself. And there's all this stuff under that umbrella that they're trying to do. They think that this is the new pathway to God, if you will. And that's very faulty. That's
Yeah.
going to create all kinds of problems.
It's the pathway to somewhere. I mean, just look at CERN and the fact that they're probably opening up portals into new dimensions or black holes, trying to make contact on the other side. And wasn't that invented in CERN as well?
Yes, it was. I'm looking at the Charles Babbage thing right now, trying to figure out what they called him. But yeah, CERN was the internet was first rolled out of CERN in 1989 by Tim Berners-Lee. He was a CERN scientist. Oh, he's a part of this too. Make no mistake. So they rolled the internet out first through him in Europe at CERN, a place that has a particle collider. The first particle collider was created by the Nazis, by the way. The Internet for America was rolled out a couple years later at a place called SLAC in California, another place with a particle collider. So there's this whole, side tangent there with the particle collider places being a part of this. Charles Babbage, mathematician, philosopher, inventor, and mechanical engineer, he originated the concept of a digital programmable computer. He is considered by some to be the father of the computer. He is credited with inventing the first mechanical computer, the difference machine, that eventually led to more complex electronic designs through all the essential ideas of modern computers, which are to be found at his. Anyways, I'm not going to go through all this, but you get the point there. I don't know if they go into this is Wikipedia, right? So I don't know how much of this they get into with him trying to contact the devil, but that's the story there. And yeah, CERN's a part of it too. I mean, all this tech stuff is directly related in some sense to the occult or to metaphysical concepts. Every time, it's right around the corner. It's like that's why that movie was so prophetic. 1999, The Matrix. They were telling you what was about to happen. I feel like that ties into the singularity. And I got one more thing on that. Actually, I wanted to read a quote. One of Ray Kurzweil's, followers was this Ben Gortzel. He's a scientist, and this is a quote from him about the singularity. A point in time when technological events occur so rapidly that to the human mind it appears almost instantaneous. It's like I.G. Good in 1965 when he said the first truly intelligent machine will be the last invention that humanity needs to make. Singularity is AI, nanotech, life extension, genetic engineering, mind uploading, advanced energy tech, and etc. All of these things happening at once boost each other. And that's what Kurzweil is saying is going to happen in 2029. That's quickly approaching. I even go so far as to say that it looks a lot like it parallels Agenda 2030 to me, because that's the same time. The end of 2029 is the beginning of, obviously 2030. So this gets into that whole thing too, where they want to roll out the smart cities and everything.
Well, the Genesis project, right? That executive order that Trump just released, how they're connecting all these tech companies together and industrial companies together on this same loop to spur technological revolution and supercharge it. And who else? Henry Kissinger, Eric Schmidt, who was the former head of Google, they actually came up with a book called Genesis, right? And it's about how AI was going to save humanity. So it's not a coincidence that this whole thing is coming out now that we have Project Genesis. No one's paying attention to that. I think that's also going to supercharge that, what they show us, at least what they tell us they're going to give us. But yeah, it's all going down to this, and you better watch out. The question is how far away are we from them merging us with this AI tech, right? To where it's a everyday occurrence, and will it ever become an everyday occurrence?
How far away is the merge? That's the question. And again, going back to Ray Kurzweil, I think they're all aware of him. He's a favorite on the Lex Friedman podcast, right?
Yeah.
They all look to this guy
Yeah.
for the answers. Whether he's right or wrong, I put that aside for a moment, because this is the plan. The plan the elites the plan that they're sticking to involves Ray Kurzweil. I probably should have said that earlier. That's why I'm talking about him so much. And he's talking about this, and it's actually pretty good research. I went back and double checked it. He's talking about this perfect exponential growth chart, which ties into something you just said, a concept you just touched on, which is, when is this going to happen? Well, first of all, the first computer comes out of Nazi Germany in 1941. Kurzweil includes that as the beginning of his growth chart for technological growth. He starts it in Germany in 1941, which I think not long after that, right around 1947, we stepped through a doorway. We stepped onto this technological timeline that was developed by the Germans. If you look at the graph of that computer technology starting in 1941, it's a perfect incline to where we are right now. Perfect, too straight, too much of a right angle. Kurzweil himself even says, if someone was monitoring, it's almost like someone was monitoring growth, is what he says. It's as if this is being orchestrated, in other words, right? It's like someone or something said, this is how we do this. And if you go back to Rudolf Steiner, he was talking about this in lectures in 1915. He was saying this, it's the Roku's basilisk concept. This astral intelligence was going to come to Earth and try to help us, give us tools to build technology so that it could come through the technology, establish that bridgeway, and start to rule us through the technology. And I mean, AI would be a perfect example of that. But back to this graph, it's this perfect 80-year progress. It doesn't pause for economic recessions or wars or anything like that. It's as if, I agree with Kurzweil on this one, it's as if someone has humanity on a program and they're planning for it to end up somewhere, because it's leading to something. But dude, it starts with the Nazis.
Oh yeah. It's really interesting. I've always had this idea, because the question is, when is this going to happen? It still kind of seems like we're far enough away, at least as far as how the public views all this stuff, which is why I was always of the thought that this major technological revolution, as far as implementing it, as far as this merging with AI and robotics, turning us into cyborgs, I think is going to come after this major war that's going to take place, I believe, where they collapse the system. And I remember there was a TV show that I watched on, what was it? I think Amazon or something like that. And this is when I was kind of waking up and stuff like this. This was a while back. But the premise of that show was there was a great war. And then there were so many people injured that the only way they could heal everybody was by merging them with this AI and these robots. So you have like an entire, civilization of, cyborgs. So I wonder if, maybe they'll implement this as, hey, all you people got hurt from this giant war, stuff like that. Guess what the answer is? The answer is technology. And you could also use the war to get rid of the opposition of this technology. Because I've also thought, if they're trying to usher in this, one world technologic, government, what are they going to do with the people who are not good at technology? What are they going to do with old people? I mean, I went to the DMV the other day and they had to send me back to that room too. But there's a room where there's a bunch of old people and me trying to figure out how to use the computer because we couldn't deal with the kiosk out in front. So, what are they going to do with all of us that, don't subscribe to this technological claim to have a hard time dealing with it? Well, I think they're going to wipe us all out.
Well, and that's noted, at least it's referred to in the Agenda 2030 papers that the UN were putting out, where they were talking about how everybody was going to live happily in the city, in these 15-minute smart cities, and own nothing, be happy, and all that. But they acknowledged that, yeah, there are going to be people who do not want to follow that plan, and they're going to live out in these like enclaves or whatever outside of the city. And we don't know how well they're doing, but of course, in reality, what that would look like is probably like raids and suppression and all this and that. Like I don't think they're just going to let people peacefully exist out in the wilds. But who knows? Hopefully that they will. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe if we look at the Book of Revelation, it doesn't seem to indicate a lot of that. I mean, it talks about the Petra, people getting fed up and going into Petra, but you know, um, an occult group. The whole thing though for me is like this occult group, the Nazis. They built the first computer, and these other occultists like Charles Babbage, they build the first computers. So this whole thing starts there. It's almost like
Yeah.
I think that's I just want to hit on that again. Like that's crazy. Like that should tell you like people are like, oh, technology is not evil, and I'm not saying it is. I mean, we're using technology right now. I'm very pro tech. I'm happy about a lot of this, but there's a point where it crosses the line and this gets out of hand, and we have to know our history on this stuff, man. Really
I
do.
think this is angelic technology, right? I
Mhm.
got to assume that up in the heavens, they have way more advanced technology than we have here. And it's like a gun, right? It's who's using it. And unfortunately, in our timeline on Earth, it's at the hands of these worldly governors, at these bloodlines, at these intelligence agencies that are just going to use it and weaponize it against us for control. I think probably to, once again, use technology to overthrow democracy, if that's even real. I don't know sometimes. Um, Ultimately, it's all going to be ran by this AI god that they're creating. And they view it as a god, 100%. That's going to basically, be the heartbeat of this entire, mystery Babylon that they're ushering in.
Yeah. AI, man. The AI sentience. It's going to be a lot of people out there are going to start calling that divine. I have a feeling it's what is Arthur C. Clarke? Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Who, you think about these rollout years. The pre-programming for all this too is, I think, is another thing to touch on. They called him Arthur C. Clarke. They called him the prophet of the space age. Um, and there was occult stuff in a lot of the things he said. And you look at these years like 1999, I consider that to be a rollout year where they told us what's going to happen. A lot like the 2012 Olympics, where they showed like it was like visions of the pandemic, where they were rolling all that out. But in 1968 was another one of these years where you have Philip K. Dick put out a book called "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sleep?" It's the book that Blade Runner was based off of. Um, Artificial life, computers programmed to have a human voice that you can interact with. It's all in there, and this is in the late '60s. And I'm starting to see this. I'm starting to look more into this pre-programming and the sci-fi stuff. And I got this shelf of books over there of sci-fi. So I went over there and I've got the that Philip K. Dick book. And I opened it up and just looked in it, just to look at it with this fresh new set of eyes. And after here I am, like I'm looking into technocracy, I'm looking into the singularity. I pick up the Blade Runner book, and the first term in the first page uh, is android. That's the first term that comes to my eye. My eye catches it, right? It's talking about them. It's setting up the main character, and he's got this android. It's like a droid that he's talking to, and in the book they call it an android. And this is 1968 again. And I was just thinking, like, wow, this is this is crazy, because here I am in 2026 with my Android that will talk to me if I want, will give me directions if I want. It goes everywhere with me like a Star Wars droid or something, does all these special tasks for me. And I'm just like, man, it's this concept, it's this truth in the movies, lies in the media. This is how they roll. 1968. It's also 2001 Space Odyssey, bro, where they have an AI on board of the spaceship that
So,
talks to the guy.
so this is really interesting. I had this like realization as well. I always knew that they pre-programmed through the movies, but I actually kind of saw it happen in real life. So to that point, they're on the UFO. There's all those scenes when they're talking to the AI and they're with the screens and stuff like that, and the AI is talking back to them. Well, anyways, I picked up a guy in my Uber the other day who was a teacher, right? And on the way to his class, he literally created a lesson using an AI tool. And he talked to it just the way they would talk to the AI in the movies. And he literally created this lesson all through AI. It's like, give me this, I'll take away that, make it up to the standard. And obviously you do his updates and stuff with the AI. But here's this conversation between the AI that you see that was happening in the movies taking place in real life with an elementary school teacher.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy. I mean,
like I saw him create an entire lesson
right
in 3 minutes on the way to his job. And it was probably a good lesson.
Mm-hmm. I mean, hey, I've heard some of these AI songs that weren't bad. They weren't bad. I mean, but I don't want to go see an AI concert of AI music. The reason why I like music is because of the human element. It's the same reason why I like podcasting. Like, I'm sitting here, I'm at points in this episode, I'm sure I've stumbled over my words, but that's fine. It's like, it's the human element that makes this fun, makes this exciting. It's like, what are you going to say next? What are we going to talk about next?
Yeah.
And that it's, it's not coming from some sort of a database that studied humans. It's coming from a real human, right? Another thing that I saw with this rollout stuff would be like, I think I failed to touch on this, like 1999, The Matrix comes out, obviously. Also, that movie, The Ninth Gate, comes out in 1999. And I don't know, man, seemed like there was some programming in that. That was like same sort of thing. It was like an entity stringing along mankind, trying to curse man to open a portal for it, to bring it back into this existence. And this guy, the whole thing was like rang to me like a ritual to Ishtar. And that was 1999. And yeah, I just wanted to throw that in because of, these power years, or these rollout years, as I like to call them. It's very real, where they use the sci-fi for this stuff.
Oh, yeah. I mean, to me, what's really crazy that they're rolling out, and I don't know if the people are ever going to buy this, but they're replacing humans with AI. I remember I made the mistake. I mean, like pictures of AI. I remember I made the mistake of doing some research on AI girlfriends, right? These apps that are coming out that people have relationships with. Well, anyways, I was doing that on Instagram. There is an entire cottage industry of AI girls that you can't tell if they're AI or not. And it's perverted and stuff like that. But dude, it's crazy how they're ushering in all of that. I mean, you don't know if the person's real or not. I mean, the other day I watched a podcast that was 100% AI, and it was a little bit too perfect, but nonetheless, it's out there and it's getting views. And I wonder if those views are real, if people are really accepting this stuff, or if they're artificial and inflated so it looks like we're accepting that stuff. Because I think that's part of the magic trick too.
Yeah, what do you think about that, man? Do you think that they've rolled out this sort of army of AI bots already, and they're all over the place, like they're on all those, all the major social media hubs and everything? Do you think that there's already been like a CIA or some sort of other nefarious intelligence program that said, okay, let's roll out a fake group of humans, an AI group of humans posing as humans on the internet? Do you think that's happened?
Oh, yeah. And I think that's just more programming for us to eventually accept it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we definitely have AI bots that are all over social media that influence the algorithm based on what they comment, if they like it. That's another thing. They can, socially engineer how to suppress certain ideas that they don't want out there just based off of AI bots going on there and commenting on it based on how they comment. But yeah, dude, it's crazy how, I mean, I just went back and forth, but yeah, there's actually people out there that are now having relationships with actual computers. And I actually feel bad for these people because the amount of loneliness that you have to be, feeling to have a relationship with an AI avatar is just next level. So my hearts and prayers go out to these people and stuff like that. But I think that's what they want. Is that what they had in the beginning? Did they remake the movie Blade Runner? And in the beginning, wasn't his girlfriend an AI girlfriend?
Yeah. I believe so. Yeah. Yeah, I believe so. Let me check
Yeah.
this real quick. Yeah, that's a good point, man. Did you see this? Yeah.
Yeah.
This is Trump's. Okay, so it seems to be legit. I'll just say allegedly, just in case. But allegedly, this is a quote from Trump's letter to Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Store or Jonas Store.
Mhm.
And Trump says allegedly here, considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars plus, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace.
Well, he ended up getting that Nobel Peace Prize. The
Right.
lady who got it gave it to him.
Oh, wow.
So the opposition to Maduro that kind of spearheaded the color revolution in Venezuela, she was awarded with that Nobel Peace Prize. And she came last week and she actually gave it to Donald Trump to have.
Mm. And that's like going back to Greenland, right? Or going back to the Technate map that includes Greenland. I
Yeah.
don't know. Did we talk about this? Venezuela's on the map.
Yeah. So that's why they went into Venezuela. I think they wanted to get the southern and northernmost border of the Technate and then deal with the stuff in between. And I think that's when we're going to see some type of high impact event that will come. And then they'll use defense, right? We all know 9/11. They then use that as a precursor to, the Patriot Act, surveillance going into the Middle East. I think we'll see something similar to that. And it's going to be big. At some point, they got to pull the trigger. And that's another thing. As this is unfolding, it's like, how long until they actually pull the trigger? You can only talk about this stuff for so long until you either have to shit or get off the pot. And I think we're fastly approaching that, which is so important to me to just to be abiding in the spirit, abiding in God during all this time, because I think our lives are going to change drastically. We don't even realize it yet. We're so concerned with, just stuff that doesn't matter that the media tells us matters. And it's going to be a wild 2026 without a doubt.
Yeah, without a doubt. I'm actually going to pull up this map one more time just to show everybody because you brought up a good point there. I think with um, seeming like they want to get the furthest most corners.
Right. So you
So
got Alaska up
which
there.
we got Alaska in the 30s, 20s. I don't know. I have to look it up again. Right, but we got Alaska late. Of course, he's talking about wanting to get Greenland now, and then so you get these corners of the Technate map because Venezuela is the corner at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Colombia is part of that too. And right after he took Maduro, he was talking about going into Colombia.
Mm-hmm.
And it's for a reason. And the thing is, like, people got to realize the plans of this are so much older than we think, right? They didn't, Trump didn't wake up overnight and go, well, I want the natural resources in there just because I want to expand the American empire, right? There's always something deeper, a deeper layer to all of this. And I'm sure there's something deeper than this, but I think that all the ideas they're kind of telling us in the mainstream alternative media, they all fall under the banner of the North American Technate. Like, these are all points within the North American Technate that they're trying to create. And like I said, where does that go back to? 1931, right? And the Canadian branch had ties to the Nazis. They're to the left of communism. And these tech bros that are kind of ushering this now, they're engineers in their own right. And I think we're seeing this happen eventually.
Yeah. The new deal was technocratic as well. A lot of people don't realize that, I think.
Efficiency, yeah. And that's when I was doing some research. What was interesting, before the New Deal came about, there was a time in American history where technocracy, this group got a lot of flowers, a lot of good publicity. And then they were saying how the New Deal drew from that a little bit, incorporated some of their own stuff. And that kind of left technocracy, at least that movement, in the dust. And it all became about the New Deal. But there was a period of time where technocracy was, the bee's knees in American society. And to your point, the New Deal drew from that and kind of did their own thing.
Yeah. Yeah. The it was a way of thinking fueling FDR and his administration. And I think he was kind of quietly implementing these rules or guidelines of technocracy with the way he set up his little team of experts to kind of run things, the few controlling the many, right? And they were destroying excess amounts of food and dumping out large vats of milk and burning train cars full of food to regulate prices because that's what the experts said would be good. Meanwhile, people are starving because it's the Great Depression. And they also put in a bunch of unnecessary dams on ancient sites. So I think so Americans wouldn't know the true history of this place because this place has always been, I don't want to say about excess, but limiting farmers on how much food they can produce is not the American way. Limiting anything, I don't think, is the American way, if I can say that. I mean, it's like going back, and that's not an American thing. That's like a North American thing, going back before they even established the country, before 1776, when the Phoenicians were coming over here. What made this place such a power center, hub of commerce, is our relations, our rivers' relations to ports, and the portability of it all, and how you can have a farmer up in, off the Mississippi somewhere, and you can totally comb through his crop, put it on a barge, and have it on the Mississippi and have it heading out to the Gulf and have it out into the world in no time. The problem then is not how much did he produce. The problem is we need to do that again. We need you to do exactly what you did and just keep it coming. That's the North American way. That's what made this place powerful in the first place. And of course, they were running copper out of here and everything else. So this idea of limiting farmers that FDR was doing was just, I think, bonkers from the start. And it's just no coincidence to me that the same group. So what they did was, under the New Deal, they wrote out what's called the WPA, Works Progress Administration. They said it was to give people jobs. And what they did was, during the 30s, they used that and they said, we're going to create all these dams. A lot of them were these unnecessary dams. And in past episodes, I broke this down where they would pick places on the river to blow it out and make it a big reservoir of water. Well, those places they picked on the river were ancient sites pointing back to this hub of commerce. And it's like, is that a coincidence?
No.
I don't think so. It's like they were trying to shut down the spirit of North America itself and what this place has always represented.
It's interesting. Yeah.
There's just one more thing. Like, if you look at the Ohio and the Mississippi, I mean, we got Cahokia up off the Mississippi, and off of Ohio, you have Angel Mounds. Nobody talks about Angel Mound site. That was an ancient city, and it's off the Ohio River. These places were everywhere. We built our cities right on top of some of them. Pittsburgh, Nashville, St. Louis, Cincinnati. We built these cities on top of ancient cities. This is just information that's been covered up and not told to the public. And in some kind of a weird way, it relates back to the philosophy of these people like FDR.
Oh, I believe you. And you said something interesting, is that you said FDR used experts, right, to roll out his policies. And when you said that, I thought of technocracy again. Because one of their critiques when they were trying to usher this out was the cult of expert. And think about experts rule our lives. Everybody trusts the science. He's an expert. He's an expert. So, what did technocracy want to do? Well, they wanted to replace all the laymen, all the politicians that didn't know what they were doing, and replace them with experts, with engineers that knew exactly what they were doing. So, you could see how the New Deal kind of took from technocracy and turned it into his thing with experts. Maybe that's where the idea of experts actually came from.
Yeah, FDR did not pull America out of the Great Depression. He extended the Great Depression. History has that wrong, as they do most things. He extended it by implementing technocratic systems ran by these experts who would argue with farmers over the price of a chicken. These guys, because they had an agricultural degree from a liberal university, they thought they'd never even set foot on a farm. And they thought, no, you guys who are fourth generation farmers who've been doing this your whole entire lives and picking up the tricks of the trade from your grandpa, you don't know what you're talking about. I have the degree. I'm the expert. I work for FDR. I get to tell you what the price of a chicken is and everything else. I get to tell you how much you're allowed to produce and how much you're not allowed to produce. These guys have never set foot on a farm. And now there's a new form of this technological governance emerging. And this time they're buying politicians, they're buying vice presidents, they're running the country like it's a business, and like they could just put these CEO experts at the very top and do this top down approach. And the country isn't a company. That's you got to stop thinking of it that way. We need to run it like a country, not like a company. You got businessmen making decisions as if this was a business, and let's not run this thing like a business. It's not good. I could go on a whole political rant here about putting in businessmen in the office who think that they can do whatever they want and want to, put military police in the streets and patrol this place in the name of immigration or what have you. My point is that they used the Great Depression as a crisis, and that's how they were able to roll this out again. So we need to watch what they call a crisis, and we need to watch what they try to roll out on us because people were desperate and they allowed this to happen. You can see it happening today. If there's no crisis, they create one. 9/11 Patriot Act.
Well, look what's happening in Minneapolis. Trump's calling for the Insurrection Act. And what was crazy, I saw a couple of videos broken down. There was a whole bunch of crisis actors that had been used previously that people had sniped in videos and stuff. And what are you doing? You're creating civil unrest over, a contentious issue. But ultimately, it's going to be to usher in the federal government, more government control, right? They ruled this world by Hegelian dialect. Problem, reaction, solution. They create the problem, they throw gasoline on the reaction, and then their solution is always just federal overreach, technocratic overreach. And I think every single country applies this method to ruling their own people. And if you want to take a look at what's going on in Iran right now, a lot of people thought this whole color revolution that's going on, which was definitely influenced by, Israel and America, but they're like, oh, they're going to get rid of the Shah. No, they're not going to get rid of the Shah. Trust me, the Shah of Iran controls his country just like America controls their country. And we know these intelligence agencies work together. And what happened as a result? Well, they didn't depose the Shah. The Shah just killed a bunch of people, and now he has even more control over that populace. So they're definitely creating these high impact events so they can just, bring in their systems of control, which are always more overreach, more surveillance, less freedom. And essentially, at some point, it will just be AI running the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not already. Sometimes I wonder about that. I wonder about how much of what we're seeing is the AI, because I know how chatbot works. The AI giving them their plans and they're just kind of executing it.
Yeah. I mean, tech is the bridge to power. It's the new opiumization of the masses. Make no mistake, that's how they're going to use it. Palantir, the seer stone, right? The ability to know the future, see the future, and manipulate the future. That's what these people are all about, and they see tech again as the means to do that. And I think this was the plan all along for some of these guys that are using these their companies as sigils to make manifest this to happen, right? And I think the hidden plans are starting to become clearer the more you look into this.
Have you ever
That's
looked
why.
into the sentient world simulation?
No, I don't think so. What about
Oh,
it?
wow. You want a conspiracy theory?
Yeah, let's
Go
go.
check out. Oh, it's not really conspiracy theory. It's real. You can look it up. Um, just Google sentient world simulation, and essentially the military industrial complex, these companies or whatever, or these organizations worked with Purdue University in creating. And when I hear that it's a combination of the military industrial complex and a university, I just think DARPA and then
Right.
rolled out. But they've created, this is a real thing, look it up, um, a simulated reality of America with over 6 million nodes, which are entities, either people, government officials, institutions, and they update it with real live data from America. And they have avatars of each one of us. And they use third party, data brokers to scrub, your social media and stuff like that. And this is why the data is so valuable, I think, to the government secretly. They then upload all your data. So they have avatars of each one of us. Now, the official narrative is that they use this for like emergency response stuff. But this was the military that created this, which means it's ultimately a weapon against us. And I think they use this to test out psyops to see how each one of us is going to react. And a couple articles that I've read about describing this thing, they associate this with pre-crime, right? So this idea of kind of telling the future or what's going to happen. But I think not that they can tell what's going to happen, they actually make what's going to happen, right? They put in certain inputs into the matrix or whatever you want to call it. We react a certain way. They know how we're going to react. They're going to play us like a video game. But yeah, check out the sentient world simulation. When I understood that they had a simulated world where they can test out psyops, I was like, okay, now I know why everything works. And I always say, if you want to know why something happens, pay attention to people's reactions because that was the intention. And there could be multiple reactions that they actually want to elicit.
Mhm. Yeah, I found out, to speak on the pre-crime aspect of this, which boy, talk about the movies again, right? There was that Tom Cruise movie that touched on that. What was it? Do you remember which one I'm talking about?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
forget the name, but yeah.
Minority Report,
Minority
maybe.
Report. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they actually did that recently with New Orleans. They, I think it was illegal too, and they're getting some backlash for it. But with the New Orleans Police Department, they rolled out some sort of a pre-crime AI thing where they tried to solve crimes before they happen, to stop them before they happen. It's all based on data, and I think they were watching people's daily actions and deriving from that information, trying to derive which ones of them would be more prone to commit a crime. And I don't know the details on it. I just know that they tried it in New Orleans, and now they're getting a lot of backlash for it. It's scary stuff. We should be fighting back against this. I'm glad people are. We don't want this in our cities. We don't want our American cities, again, I've said it before, I'll say it again, to be this 1984 surveillance state that we've seen in all the movies, right? So
But
it's accelerationism.
I wonder if we're already there and we don't even realize it, right? Just because we don't have cameras all over the place like they do in China, although we have a lot. Guess what's tracking everything we do? Our phones, our apps. And in the terms of service with all these apps, guess what? There is a back door right to the federal government, and they can acquire any type of data that they want, and they'll obligedly, happily give that to them. So, I always wonder if we live in a surveillance state and we don't even realize it, you
Mm,
know?
yeah, man. I mean, it's unbelievable what these people will do. It's eight
I mean,
dollars
think about
for
it. If you have a
days.
phone in your pocket, they can track everywhere you go, what store you go into, they know what you're searching. I mean, it's like we're almost there.
Yeah, for
Or,
sure. Oh, one thing I wanted to ask you about. I noticed that the Technates were using the yin yang as a symbol. Do you pick up on anything regarding that?
well, where did the yin and yang come from, right? That's the duality of life. And that actually goes to Taoism and the primordial egg and the Pengu god, which is a horn god. So according to that creation story, there was a egg in the middle of the universe, right? It exploded, kind of like the Big Bang, I guess you would say, science or whatever. And then this god Pengu separated the good and bad energies. And that's where we get this idea of duality in the universe. So that's where you get, that symbol of the yin and yang. It's straight from the primordial egg and it's associated with a horned god. So yeah, I noticed that too when I saw the Technocracy logo a long time ago. I'm like, wait a minute, where does that logo actually come from? And who put that idea in that person's head to use that logo?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how many of our thoughts are our own. Just read, when Judas, turned on Jesus, Satan came and put ideas on his heart. So yeah, I think that's very significant that their logo is a yin and yang and where that originates from.
Yeah, I mean, Chinese mythology, like many others, the universe develops out of this primordial chaos, the chaos dragon. I just think that that's very interesting that this goes back to the beginning. And also with the yin and yang, I noticed that they changed the colors of it for the Technate movement. It's usually shown as white and black, and they changed it to white and red. And I just wonder if there was some intention behind that for something as well. I know that red was something the Phoenicians like to use. And other, the red shield, right? You and I've talked about this. That red, the elites, the bloodlines like to use that red in their shields and crests. So I just wonder if there was something to that.
I don't know, but I think there's definitely some, because I noticed that too. I didn't notice the color aspect of it, but I did like, that's such a weird logo to have
I thought so too,
for
man.
technocracy,
Right.
like,
Yeah, and it's like again, man, like it's like why did the Nazis decide to use a swastika, an ancient symbol?
yeah. Well, it's a symbol of the fallen gods, right?
Yeah.
That's why you see that symbol all over the world in all different cultures, because these gods ruled over the entire thing.
Mm-hmm.
The Nazis or the Thule Society were in communion with the same gods that the Hindus, worship and stuff like that. And a lot of people like to point to that's really a Hindu symbol, but it means something good. No, that's a fallen angel symbol. That's a God symbol. Now you can repurpose it and say this is what it's for, but I think behind the scenes, it's just paying homage to the gods that they worship.
Yeah, it does seem to always kind of be closely related to the occult. I mean, I think one of the oldest swastikas, if I'm remembering correctly, is carved into a rock in the Ukraine. And you look into that region and you look at the Scythians and the migration of people groups, and it does seem to point to sorcerers being in the area. That symbol is so enigmatic. It's so hard to touch on or help put your thumb on. But I agree with you. It seems like it might be one of these little G
Yeah.
symbols.
Well, I think the reason you find it all over the place is because in Atlantis, how many kingdoms were there? 10.
Well, there were five, oh, 10 or
Or is
10.
there 10, I believe?
Uh, I've heard different things. I've heard it was well, okay, maybe it was 10, but I do know it was like the originally it was the children of Poseidon.
Yeah.
And I thought he had five children, but maybe he had.
Okay. So, but like I said, I think these gods at some point they ruled all over the world. Or should I say fallen gods? I think there's only one most high God. Or should I say B'nai Elohim? That's the correct term, sons of God, rebellious sons of God. I think they ruled all over the world, which is why you find these ancient symbols.
I agree. I was just going to look it up because we're at the end here. Oh,
Yeah.
so there were 10 kings of Atlantis,
There you go.
and they were. Plato wrote that these 10 rulers were the sons of Poseidon. So I may have been wrong there. Maybe he had more than five. Atlas, Gadrius, Ampheres, Evmon, Menusa. These are hard to pronounce, actually. Otto Thoschon. Anyways, there's 10 of them. If you look carefully at the map, you can find each of these names labeling the land that they were suggested they might have ruled over. So yeah, 10. I think you're spot on with that. 10 kings of Atlantis. Interesting, man. And again, that knowledge comes out of Greek. And Greek, it was Solon. Solon visited, what was it? He visited Italy, maybe? and went down beneath Egypt, and he was in a temple in Egypt, I believe, and he went down beneath the temple. There was a passageway to an underground river. They called it the underground Nile. Is some symbolic of the as above, so below world. And he gets on a boat, a little canoe, and they ride up this underground river, and they stop at a little island where there was tablets, ancient information written on these tablets, and it was told to him some of the secrets of Atlantis.
Yeah.
And that it was a real place. And that some version of that story now has been carried by the mystery schools since then. And it's what you see in the doctrines of many of these groups who I would argue broke off of that group out of Greece. Templars, Rosicrucians, Freemasons. They all have a version of that story that they adhere to. And part of the story is that Atlantis, that fallen civilization, whether it was in Thule in northern Greenland or somewhere else in the Atlantic, will one day rise again and will be one day presided over by these scientific priest kings, guardians of the republic, a few people ruling the many, and they're experts in their own little ways. They all bring something to the table, like the 10 kings of Atlantis, Poseidon's sons. So this goes deep. I think that's why they use the ancient symbols, because this is ancient theology that they're adhering to in the first place. That's why you see a yin yang pop up, which is it's said to be like the swastika. It's said to be one of the most ancient, oldest symbols in the world.
Yeah.
Goes back to the same group, I think, man. And in the Bible it says like the days of Noah.
Right. Which is Atlantis. And it does go back to the same group. It goes back to a horn god named Pengu. Like literally a horn god named Pengu. So I'm with you on that one for sure.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about this? And we can wrap it up with this, bro. Obviously, days of Noah, we know what happened, the flood, the great deluge. Up until that flood covered a lot of this earth and wiped out a lot of those civilizations. What do you think, man? I think that one of the civilizations that was around in the days of Noah that the Bible may be referring to was indeed Atlantis, or an Atlantis, an Atlantean society. Let's just say Atlantis were very Atlantean, some sort of a branch off of Atlantis. Because, if you go and look in some of the older text, and if you were to take that for, I guess take it for what it's worth, but if you were to take the narrative in like the Mahabharata, so to speak, or one of the other holy books they have, I think it talks about how there was a war with the Rama Empire of India and Atlantis, and there was a lot of desolation after that. They wiped each other out almost. So I think maybe by the time you get to the days of Noah, there was still a remnant of the Atlantean civilization there to be destroyed finally, right, by the flood. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so we don't really know too much about pre-Diluvian history, right? That's pre-flood history. Because the days of Noah also are before the flood and after the flood. We have to take that in consideration. So,
ooh, that's a good point.
Right? And we know there were giants on the earth before and after the flood. Now, they might have been smaller. They called them, what's it called? The Ra. I don't know why I'm blanking on this. The Raphaim, right? Yeah, so I think, I guess to answer your question, I think the days of Noah is the same as Atlantis. It's just the Gnostic or secular way of describing the world before the flood, where these fallen gods came down here. Mayan culture talks about it. Egyptian culture talks about it. They all talk about this ancient time. The book of Enoch talks about it, where these fallen gods came down here, created lineages or bloodlines to rule over us like kings. And then eventually, God saw what was going on, and got mad and made these giants kill themselves, right? I think that's what the book of Enoch says. That's how he got rid of the giants. And it was the same thing. So I'm with you. And I think it says it will be like the days of Noah in the final generation, right? So what do we have now? We have these 10 regional trading blocks, the 10 kings or whatever, just like the 10 kings of what's called Atlantis. We have this introduction of aliens into the public consciousness, which are really these fallen gods that once walked amongst men. So I think the parallels are so similar that it leads me to believe we might be in the final generation.
Yeah. Well, when you put it like that, then
no, it's all there. And think about this also coincides with this technological revolution we're talking about, right? When these watchers came down, they taught us all this stuff against, God's will. And it breaks that down in the book of Enoch. So yeah, I believe there was a futuristic, society in Atlantis. They had all types of angelic technology. And I think, we see that all today. And I think it's leading up to that.
Man. Woo! There you go. That's one way to end a podcast. Bring it all together.
I do have to say, people are like, how can you say the world's ending and laugh? And that's because, once again, it's important so much that we abide in the spirit during this time. That every day, and I'm not perfect, and boy, do I mess up all the time, but every day I think we should just show up and go, God, my creator, here I am. Do with me what you will, may be a vessel of your light to the other people, to the other nations, and do everything we can to bring people into the fold, and ultimately with love with everybody. There's no one that's not redeemable in the eyes of God. Nobody. So let's not put up walls as we go down. That's what the system wants us to do. Let's not generalize, complete groups of people. Understand that it's elites, it's bloodlines that are doing this stuff. And let's lead with love, because that's how you really fight this, demonic stronghold over the world right now. You choose God. You choose to convey the fruits of the spirit, which are love, joy, happiness, respect, things like that in nature. So I think as long as we do that, we'll be good during this time, and we won't lose our wits about us.
Yeah. Psalm 91, 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but will not come near you. You will only observe with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. If you say, the Lord is my refuge, and you make the Most High your dwelling, no harm will overtake you, no disaster will come near your tent. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. They will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the cobra. You will trample the great lion and the serpent.
Perfect way to end it.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Man, that one gets me every time. Wow. What a passage. Thanks again, Ben. Tell everyone where they can find you, brother.
Yeah, so you can find me at End of the World News on Instagram. On YouTube, it's End of the Worlds with an S News. That's the only thing that was available. I know it can get kind of weird or whatever. And then you can find me on BitChute and across all audio platforms at End of the World News.
Awesome.
And thanks for having me on here. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Like you said, we're very like-minded. And I'm sure the people who listen to you are very like-minded too. And it's always refreshing just to know you're not alone with your crazy thoughts.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, we'll do another show and build off of this or tackle something else one day. I always appreciate your input, man. I'm glad that our paths crossed. Very happy to have you on the show. And, that would explain why I couldn't find your YouTube, by the way, because I didn't know about the S. I was looking for it the other day. But yeah, we'll end it with that, man. And everybody check out Ben's stuff. I'll leave the links below. And as always, break the mold, conquer the realm, and thanks for listening.